arts, um, stumbled into the visual arts while I was just trying to find temp work in New York, um, and kind of took that into documentary film once I had self-deported and moved to the UK. Um, and it's there's to me there's a natural connection between visual storytelling and like writing it on the page. And I think the most obvious connection to that is like screenwriting, right? Where so much of what we see is actually a written screenplay. Um, so I guess when I was writing this book, and a lot of the reasons I structured the book the way it is with all the different layers, is I was kind of thinking in a scenic way, and kind of while I was writing, kind of visualizing what that would look like.
Right.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. There is that connection. I don't think I did it so consciously though. I think it just sort of came naturally after years of doing this, the filmmaking, like for a commercial filmmaking production company. Just doing that work, it kind of just seeps in to the writing and yeah.
Yeah. Well, what was your first step? I know it originated as an essay before you sold the book, but what was your first step in sort of approaching the book as a book?
Um, gosh, I don't think I was going to so overtly tell the story of
Right.
being undocumented, just because I had kept that as a secret for so long that it just didn't come naturally to me to just be like, blah, I'm
Yeah.
free now. Here's a book. Um, it was just kind of like, oh, I guess I could like make a little mention of it. And in that first essay, you could see it. I just kind of mention it as one sentence and then I move on. But my main interest at the time of writing it as essays was in the link between food, culture, and history, and particularly the way all of the occupations and trade and history of the Philippines influenced the food, because I could see that as something that is expanding still in the Filipino diaspora as the diaspora grows. For instance, the dish sinigang, depending on where you live in the world, you use a different souring agent. In England, you can use rhubarb, you know. In the Philippines, there's lots of different other fruits you can use, for instance. So that was my main interest, and I just kind of let the writing happen without trying to control it too much, and then I reined it in later on. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the food element here is so well done. Was food something interesting to you? Like, how did food become interesting to you?
Yeah, I guess, and I talk about this in the book.
Yeah.
My my mom wasn't a big cook. She was very much like a career woman, and she wasn't interested. And I've had this discussion before with other Filipina friends whose moms didn't cook either. I think there's just a certain generation of Filipino women that went to university and had a career, and because of the inequality in the Philippines, there was always household help. So the maids cooked. There was a cook,
Yeah.
and that's just not something my mom did. Like her family later on became affluent enough to afford household help by the time my mom was 19, so she just never bothered cooking. So for me, once I had left the US, I just felt almost like not an obligation, but like a need to rediscover it. And I think being in the Philippines after self-deporting really helped because I just ate all the food in sight and like ate all the street food, and I brought all of that with me to the UK and was like, I need more of that. I didn't
Yeah.
have that for 2 decades in the US and I need more of that. So for a long time, way before writing, for about 5 years, I was just cooking the food and eating it for myself. And again, it was just something that unfurled on the page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that aspect at the toward the end of the book when there's a secret boyfriend and you're someone says, "Oh, he doesn't eat Filipino food."
Yeah.
And then we meet Steven, the like absolute angel, the husband, and he's like eating it up. And I just
Yeah.
like that you did that without you didn't point it out, but obviously for the reader it's very clear that it's like, "Oh, okay, this is the one. This is the one." And like I
Yeah.
love that you use food to do that. And I think it's so clear too that you're using like the way the recipes are that they're set apart from the narrative. It really is so I think it really tells this story that you're explaining here, where it was a reconnection for you. It was a conscious effort for you to bring the recipes into your story. So how did you decide? And I told you over email, like I'm going to teach the way that you're using recipes here to tell stories, but like why is, the how did you decide which recipe for which story, and how did you kind of weave that into it, into the book?
Yeah. Yeah. I think deciding what recipe to use was probably one of the most difficult parts of writing this because there's like five elements, right? There's the
Yeah.
personal narrative, there's the food, there's food history, there's mythology, and then just general history.
Yeah.
And trying to pair these things up so that the sum of each like parts of the chapter kind of told a bigger story. That was
Yeah.
really hard. And I've had to chuck out some chapters, some recipes. I've had to like change the recipes a few times. But the main decision maker for me with each of the chapters was when these elements link up, does it say something more?
Yeah.
And is it relevant to the book itself? So that was really difficult, and particularly the chapter about my dad, I changed that recipe like three times until I didn't stumble upon it. I literally woke up one day and thought, oh my God, pinikpikan, which is this kind of ceremonial beaten chicken recipe. And that came to me like a week before he died. So I was rewriting it and then he passed away. And that was one of those sort of very almost mystical things that was
Yeah.
like, okay, this has to be this chapter.
Yeah.
And then the other chapters were easier. Spamsilog was very easy. That just made perfect sense to me in terms of talking about American occupation in the Philippines and imperialism and the use of the Filipino body to build American capitalism. That was easy. So varying degrees of difficulty with that. And then in terms of weaving in the recipes, like at first I think I wanted to kind of do a tongue-in-cheek send up of, those recipe blogs where there's like a story and then you get
Yeah.
the recipe at the end. And I thought, there was I think there was like a startup or some kind of horrible website that was like, "Oh, we'll just scrape the recipes out and you don't have to read the stories." I don't know if you remember that website.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they
Oh, I
had to
know.
like take their business down because everybody hated them.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of that and just thinking of how, these wonderful recipe bloggers are like sharing a piece of themselves, and this website's basically saying, we don't want that. We just want what you can give us that is of use to us. And there
Yeah.
is something about that that just rang true to me in terms of how certain groups in the United States are forced to live that way, right? To go, well, here, if we give you something in return, then you can ingest us, right? So in making the recipe lines difficult to access, sometimes
Yeah.
you have to go pages before you get the next line. I wanted to make it clear that, this we're not just something you can consume for your pleasure when you feel like it. You have to contend with the realities of our story and sort of some of the bigger hidden truth and the difficult things that people don't want to swallow, particularly. And I was thinking specifically of any criticisms I had of American imperialism. I wanted to make the reader contend with that. So that was
Yeah.
that decision of making the recipes almost like an afterthought.
Right, right, right. And were you the choreography of the cooking is so well done too when you are talking about cooking. Like were you taking notes as you cooked? How were you approaching that?
Yeah, yeah. Some of it is just from memory.
Yeah.
A lot of these recipes are very familiar to me. When I was figuring out how I best like to make these recipes, I didn't really have notes. I just remember taking lots of pictures. So a lot of it was just combing through like my old photos and going, how did I do this again? Like
Yeah, yeah.
where was that picture with all the ingredients? And then a couple of the recipes I had to retest just to make sure because I'd forgotten.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a mix of things. I'm not a meticulous note taker. I wish I was, but I have ADHD, so I don't remember where I put my notes anyway. But
No, I was paying attention to it because my next book has a lot of like, and it's, my editor kept being like more, 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 and I'm like, okay. And so, but yeah, for me it was all this memory of the choreography, and I feel like when you
yeah,
get into cooking in your head and like rendering it on the page, I
yeah,
feel like it's a really good feeling. I don't know if you
yeah. Do you find yourself like I was doing this at points, kind of going,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, doing yeah,
there's like a
doing the
physical
movement.
memory. Yeah. I was
Yes,
like, okay, what
yes.
did I do? Oh yeah, and then yeah. And then I emptied that jar that one time and yeah, okay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
No, I
yeah.
love that. And I find that even just with regular recipe writing, that's usually what I'm doing. Like because usually I'll write a recipe by writing down, okay, I have the ingredients down, but the methods are all in my head. I have
That's
never written
it.
down a method except when I have to
Yeah.
communicate it. And
Yeah,
so like
exactly.
finding the cooking in your head, I don't know, I like it as a process. I think it's like one of those things that really it combines the physicality of cooking with writing, and if you get
Yeah.
into the flow of it just right, you get it like
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
perfect. It's like really great.
Yeah. It's almost like an elevated version of like asking like a grandma or an aunt or an uncle how they make something and they're like, I don't know, you just put the salt in. Yeah, how much salt?
Exactly.
You just put it in.
I know. I woke up. I read something. It was probably I literally woke up in the middle of the night last night, and I read something about the significance of like WhatsApp voice notes in Indian cooking with sharing things. And I was like,
Oh,
oh, that's
that's
like
lovely.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And like voice notes have been I've been obsessed with WhatsApp and like food and stuff, but
Yeah.
it's so much easier for people to pass things along that way rather than to write them.
Hmm.
Which is it's just an interesting aspect of recipe writing, which is how do you
Yeah.
interact with it? What
I
is it?
mean, it's the earliest form of storytelling, isn't it? So
Yeah,
that makes
yeah.
perfect sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask about, how much you obviously you're weaving colonialism, diaspora, your own family, the mythology, the food, all of it is coming together and it's doing so beautifully. And I picked a paragraph that I'll read because I'm not sure if everybody has had a chance to read the book yet. But
Okay.
there's a moment on page 54 when I feel like you
Yeah.
just like hit it so beautifully. But well, maybe you can give me some of your taba, I said, poking at his new pot belly. I had yet to discover that in America, our people ate food meant for fiestas as their everyday meals. Kari kari, sorry if I'm saying anything
No, it's
incorrectly.
okay.
Dinuguan, pancit, sisig, lumpia, lechon bagnet, afritada, caldereta. I had yet to learn that in this land of disappearance, food from home was our only way to remind ourselves that we exist. Meals together, one of the few places we could speak in our own language, words, and flavors, freely mingling on tongues, our way of caring for each other in a land that cared nothing for us. I feel like this paragraph, I pointed it out because I was just like, oh, this is everything all at once. And it's using the food so beautifully to enact that.
Mm.
And like the fiestas is everyday meals and that sort of a thing. And, this is, I think there's a lot of jokes about food memoir as like a really,
Yeah.
trite genre and that
Yeah.
sort of a thing. And you're not plagued by those things.
Yeah.
But like, what was your sort of I know you're saying that you kind of sat down to write it and then you went back through it, but when you're doing so much research and also, bringing up so much personal narrative here,
Mm.
how did food remain sort of your through line while you were working?
Um, I think because a lot of what I was writing about was really personally
Yeah.
traumatic. Like there's a lot of like trigger warning-y stuff in the middle and the beginning. In a way, the food was kind of a nice break for me. It was like both like an island of relief. Like, okay, I'm going to talk about food for a bit.
Yeah.
And almost just also as a way of I guess reminding myself that I'm still here.
Yeah.
I'm eating.
Yeah.
I can make and I can eat. And so in a way it was both an oasis of relief and also just almost like a physical reminder of
Yeah.
having made it despite the difficult thing I was just writing about, a couple paragraphs before.
Right,
So
right.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, how was yeah, and but no, not to interrupt you, go.
No, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was thinking of how I read your book initially like at basically right around the same time that I was reading Trauma Plot by Jamie Hood, which have
Oh,
you read it yet?
no, I have it, but
Okay.
is it good?
Oh, it's fantastic. So,
Okay.
but I think of your books so much together, not just because they came out around the same time, but also because I feel like you're both answering that piece about the trauma plot, whereas like, oh, the trauma plot is overdone with like just such beautiful work that says actually this is life, and so we get to write about it because it is life,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you don't get to look away from it necessarily. But how are you, what was the personal process? What was the process life of excavating personal narrative here?
Whew, yeah. I had a really fraught relationship with putting my trauma down on the page because I think I started this book as part of like a paper for my creative writing masters, and we were a range of different ages, and we had some of the best writers in that class were these really like dynamic. My friend Maxine, who's this incredibly dynamic and intelligent, she was 23 at the time, and I just felt really stupid around her, frankly. But she had some opinions on writing about trauma, and she's a black woman, and she said, we shouldn't have to display our traumas so that white people will read us, and she's right on that one regard. But
Right.
on the other hand, and I think Melissa Fabos in her book Body Work really covers this well. Being shamed about our traumas and being told to keep silent is just a way that, to paraphrase, that people in power get to hold on to their power because they're never brought to account.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, especially when the book was still being shopped around, or the proposal, I was really resisting writing about the trauma more than the food and the history. But then I kind of began to understand that the history is a trauma as well.
Right. Right.
So, whether it's on a personal level or a national level, it's the same.
No, absolutely. And I think there's so much that balance is struck so beautifully in the book. And like I keep saying this, but you really are threading together so much, but it never feels heavy in one way or another. It feels so perfectly
Oh, that's a
balanced
relief.
throughout.
Okay,
But
thanks.
as Lorna is pointing out in the chat, your research,
Oh,
you have a bibliography here that's fabulous. Memoir doesn't usually come with a
oh,
bibliography. Mine will too. Yeah. So,
I
but
can't wait.
but what was that reading process, that research process? How did you, figure out what stayed, what didn't?
Hmm.
What is it like to write a memoir with a bibliography, with so much history, with so much
Yeah.
um that imperialism that also, of course, we have the Puerto Rico and Philippines have in common, the twice colonized Spain, then the US.
Hmm.
How was the research process with that, and weaving it in as well? Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can relate to this because you are also a deep researcher, but that was the best part for me.
Yeah.
I loved going in with a question and coming out with like 50 new answers and like 100 more questions. That was the best part. And a lot of this book was a learning process for me. I didn't know a lot of what ended up in the book.
Right.
And that was kind of what drove it as well, was just wanting to understand more and more, and then finding a lot of stuff, as I'm sure you're finding as you're writing your next book, of just going, what the, and then
Yeah.
wanting to find out more, and then
Yeah.
being spurred in that new direction. So I didn't find it overwhelming at all. I did have to cut like 30,000 words out
Wow.
at the end, which I was very sad about. But that's what it bloated into, because there's
Right.
just so much, right? There's like
Right.
so much that we find out, and the book is actually just a portal that the reader should follow up into more discoveries.
Yes.
So yeah, I didn't find it overwhelming, and I enjoyed gathering all those resources because I want folks to dig into this, right? Like
Right.
like that's just as precious as the writing itself, these sources that you're finding that maybe people don't know about as much. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and how was it doing the research and doing the writing in the UK? Did that distance help with the process, do you think? Or
Yeah, in some ways, yeah, like yes and no. I think for a while I was feeling kind of sorry for myself, like, oh, I don't get access to, like, I can't just go to the Library of Congress if I wanted to, or it's really hard to go to the libraries in the Philippines. But after a while, I was like, a lot of Philippine history is so fractured and hidden away in different places anyway, that no matter where was living, there was going to be some other inaccessible place for me.
Yeah,
So yeah, I just relied a lot on JSTOR. I relied a lot on online sources, libraries, and then just trusting a lot of what Filipinos write about our culture from their own blogs
right.
and newspapers and magazines and websites, and then following up on those sources. And if anything, it just made me really appreciate how much my fellow Filipinos also want to know about our histories and how much of
Yeah.
what's lost, because there's quite a lot out there that we're all looking into and writing and researching, and it was actually stunning to me how much I'd learned from others. So if anything, it was just I felt less lonely over time. Just
Yeah.
finding out
Yeah.
like, oh my God, this person is just they have a whole sort of website just on mythology, and this person has a website just about food, and there's writers like R.A. Orquiza's book Taste of Control, which is about American colonialism in the Philippines, was incredible writing. So at first it was lonely, and then, you know, through different texts, actually more of a just like felt like I was being part of a galaxy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I have a note here that's just like autodidact. Like you teach yourself everything, and like that's obviously, something that you learned early on in life is to teach yourself. And it
Yeah.
seems to be something that you learn over and over is do learn new things and figure it out. And I like that at the end, I think when you drop out of your PhD program, it's sort of, and you say this a bit, and in the narrative it's presented as sort of a way of saying like I'm enough now as myself, in a way of like I don't,
Yeah.
the more another degree is not going to, I don't like make
Yeah.
me any better or whatever. You have all the tools at your disposal and that sort of thing. I feel like that's where we sort of finish with you, is that you've learned that you have
Yeah.
what you need. And so,
Yeah.
I did want to ask about, in terms of, I know we've talked a little bit about you have this experience as a photographer, as a documentary filmmaker, and then also you always wanted to be writing. But how did you turn to writing? How did you went into the master's program? Like why did you decide it was time to turn to writing, and what was the feeling behind that?
Yeah. And yes, thank you. I think you have a bit of the autodidact spirit as well. You just we game recognized game. But yeah, I think I'd always written secretly, and I went into that master's program thinking I was going to be a novelist, and
Yeah.
realizing that real life is actually a lot stranger, and I need to write about that. But I think I went into it almost with some trepidation because I wasn't sure, you know, it felt almost like taking a picture and making a film was an easier and less gate-kept discipline, whereas writing felt like a loftier pursuit and something that is reserved for certain kinds of people, who go to certain kinds of programs, and I felt like maybe I wasn't good enough for that, or I don't know if I know enough, right? I didn't
Right.
have an undergraduate degree. Do I know enough? And that's always, I think, a fear that I'll have. But then I kind of just thought, I'll just write it for myself and see how it goes. And that's how I approached it, even when doing this degree and then writing this book. I don't know where I was going with this answer, but I think I just had to be less afraid. And I just thought, I've done scarier things. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
writing. It's just writing. I'll just delete it.
Yeah. Well, do you still feel that way? Do you still feel that writing is more gate kept than other artistic disciplines?
Yes. Yes, especially like the book publishing process, right? Like asking for blurbs, and the kinds of people that blurb your book determine the success, and And then the how well your book does determines if you get a next book. And there are all of these, I guess the process exists for a reason, but even just having to get an agent and finding an editor, those are all forms of cultural gatekeeping.
Yeah.
So I've found, if anything, I've found that it just kind of confirmed my worst fears. And yeah, you kind of, you almost go and come out of it wanting to demystify a little bit
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
it's like, um, because there is a weird sort of reverence that's been built up around writing, and it's like, it's just cuneiform. It's
Yeah,
not,
yeah,
it's not, doesn't have to be this complex, but that's what capitalism does to it. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, it's so interesting to hear that because I feel like I don't know why I always had this like idea that I think just because I grew up outside New York City, like I
Mm.
just was like if I go there, that's where the writing happens. So
Yeah.
like it'll be fine. Like
No, it's like
like I'll
geographically gate kept.
yeah. Yes. Like if I get there, then I'll figure the rest out. But like as long as I can get there, like everything will be okay.
Yeah.
But do you still feel that like I mean, I know but like with you this book coming out, how has it felt for you? Because I know in terms of like you do want to demystify the process a little bit. And
Mm.
you've had a lot of, if you want to talk a little bit about like seeking, you know, not seeking, but like having the press, like the British Vogue piece, the Harper's Bazaar. You people have been a little, have you felt a little bit welcomed with the book at least?
Um, it's funny, like on the one hand, like it's thrilling, right, to
Yeah,
get these placements. On the other hand, I'm like, if I didn't have a book to sell, would you even want to read what I had to say?
yeah,
Right? Like if I
yeah,
didn't, if
yeah,
it wasn't like, oh, she's written this book and it didn't feel like I had that sort of badge, would you have like accepted this essay? Like, would you still think it was good? Right?
yeah,
Is what I have to say just as valid if I didn't have a book?
yeah. No, I know, and it's a complicated thing because and then other people think things too. And I was listening. I really love the Worms podcast, which is
Yeah,
from the UK, and it's a literary space,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they do a lot of cool stuff. But they had Charlie Porter on, and I think, and
yeah.
the host is they always ask everybody about money, whether it's Eileen Miles or it's Judith
Yeah.
Butler or it's Charlie Porter, and
Hmm.
the girl was like, if I went to my mother and said, "Oh, this person wrote a book," they would think, "Oh, well, they're rich." And so like I feel like
Yeah.
that's like another aspect of it too, where it's like having a book
Yeah.
gets you access to spaces that otherwise would not give a shit about you. And having a book
Yeah.
from, of course, a big five publisher, which, originally you were with Astra House but
Hmm.
you have this luck to get with Simon and Schuster, and then
Hmm. Hmm.
now
Yeah.
it's you have this kind of badge that says, yeah, I'm allowed in. And
Yeah.
then, but there's also this other expectation that we like authors deal with, which is that other people think like, oh, the book is published. Okay, you're good now. You're set for the rest of your life, which is like a
I
very
mean, do
difficult,
you
yeah.
feel that way? I don't
No,
feel that way. I'm terrified.
it's
It's
hard.
like, this is it. I'm never going to write another book. This is it. Yeah, I think there is that perception, and because maybe there are lots of really wealthy, successful, often, white male authors in the past who've been able to just make a nice living out of it. But that's not the reality anymore. Like the average book advance in the US is like $15,000. I think in the UK it's like 12,000
Yeah,
pounds. And even for the few of us that get a slightly higher advance, I was lucky enough to get 125. It took me 4.5 years to write the book. So divide that into an annual income minus, the cuts that my agents cut and taxes. That's like 20 grand a year.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
um, it's either I find other work, or in my case, I'm lucky enough to have a partner who can support me, which isn't the case for everyone.
Yeah.
So writing is this weird space where it's gate kept and it feels like an elite space, but we're all just kind of trying to figure out how to pay the bills.
No, exactly. That's and I think it's so important to talk about, and that's why I do like
Yeah,
that from Worms that they really do try to put it out
yeah,
there, which is
yeah,
demystifying this. And I wish, when we were younger that there were more
yeah,
people talking about these things, which is
yeah.
that like you can't expect to make a living doing this. But we all
No.
have this, we come to like, oh, a book fixes everything, which it doesn't. And it's really like
Yeah,
not the same that way.
yeah.
Well, to get back to the book
Mm,
at hand, I wanted to ask about, another thing that the book challenges, in addition to challenging sort of like, you know, saccharine elements of food memoir, it also kind of
mm,
challenges the notions of food as a means of like utopian togetherness, which I also like I cannot stand. And so, I did want to ask, like, how did leaving the US change your relationship? I think you answered this a little bit already, but like, and then how has coming back to San Francisco, has that affected your habits with cooking, with going out to eat and that sort of thing? Like your relationship with food, your thinking about food.
yeah. I've found that my relationship to food is deeply related to how secure, like, the base of my Maslow pyramid is feeling. So, like, the first couple months of having moved to San Francisco, and like, we landed February 22, and then like a week later, like, the Trump administration went crazy, right?
Yeah,
And like, I I understand that I am now here in a much more privileged position. I know that. I'm very aware. I feel lucky and guilty about it. No longer being undocumented, and being a citizen of a place that is safe, well, safe-ish for now to go to.
yeah,
But at the same time, I've just been really scared and anxious, right? I have a history, right? Or what the Trump administration might call a criminal history, even though being undocumented is not a crime. I have a history here. And that's made me extremely anxious all the time. There's a huge reason why I don't have an in-person book tour, because I'm scared of boarding a plane. So my relationship to food has been very much on like the comfort eating level at the moment.
yeah,
And I don't really feel that secure enough to cook a lot. The reason I started cooking a lot in the UK was because I felt safe. I
yeah,
felt safe. I felt that I had the material security to do so. I didn't feel, there's this weird feeling of like, if I'm in the middle of cooking and I have to like leave all of a sudden, will I just be able to leave, right? And it's paralyzing, the fear that I feel here.
yeah.
And I guess that's just a part of the old trauma that I have. But yeah, when I was in the UK, I was able to do all that cooking because I felt like I could. I felt like it was
Yeah,
safe. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, it's that's the sense that one gets, is that there's this, even when you were living in New York and you started to cook, it's because of certain elements of life feeling a
Mm.
little more put together. But
Safety,
did you,
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
it's an undersung aspect, and I think that that's an interesting thing that Dirty Kitchen brings up, is that is a reason that people don't cook, is this lack of feeling like everything is secure and that
yeah,
things can go, yeah. And I think that that's under discussed as an element of when we talk about like, oh, why
yeah.
why aren't people cooking, how do we get people back in the kitchen, and
Well,
obviously
get
this
them
is
out
part
of
of
the
it.
fight or flight response.
Exactly. Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
um yeah, no, and I did want to ask too, because this sort of feels, the book is subtitled A Memoir of Food and Family, and it does seem that, and I think you kind of were just speaking to it, that it's more chosen family that brings the comfort for you than food. And so,
Hmm.
you know like, what does being back in the States have, do you still have any of that feeling? Like, is there some comfort around um chosen family and that sort of a thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's nice to be here with my husband, of
Yeah.
course. We have our safe bubble here, and it's good to be in a safe-ish state and city, I guess. But I think even in the UK, and I think this is probably for the rest of my life, I'll just always be a little circumspect of people in general. I just
Yeah.
don't always immediately feel like I can trust or make someone a friend. And the idea of chosen family still freaks me out a little bit. Um, but yeah, I think being here, it just makes me realize how important the friends I do have and have made are, right? And like knowing that you can trust someone. That's like a hard-earned treasure for me.
Yeah.
And having lived in the UK, I'm used to friends being far away. I'm used to friends mostly being accessible via screen. My sister's in the Netherlands. You know, she's my family,
Yeah.
and yeah, we have a 9-hour difference, and we make it work. But yeah, I think making the time for chosen family, it's a bit like cooking, right? It's like a security thing.
Yeah.
And in a way, maybe getting used to everyone being far away makes it easier to,
Yeah.
to get used to a new place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask, I know, are you writing not now? Are you working on something new or fiction?
Um, yeah. I'm so
I know. Novelists don't like
tired.
to touch it. They don't
I
like to,
I admire you. First of all, may I just say you finished one book and then you're like, boom, I'm going right into my next book because
yeah.
that's amazing. And you're right. I think you've mentioned this before. There is an economic imperative to doing
Yeah.
that as well. And I feel that, which is why I'm like partway into a new thing. It's historical fiction. But at the same time, there's like industry pressures of like, do I need to stick with nonfiction?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know, right? Because other authors have the privilege of just being able to do different genres. So that is what I'd like to go into at the moment. But I'm also working on adapting the memoir into a screenplay just to see where it goes.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to go anywhere, but we'll see. We'll see where
No,
that
is
goes.
that cool? Is that exciting to get into to kind of like merge?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
Okay.
It actually, and I guess, and this is your first question earlier, because of how I've structured it, it actually makes sense, like on a scene by scene basis. So yeah, I've been playing with it.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Mhm.
Well, everyone, we'll open it up to Q&A in a second. I did want to ask you about fashion. And I know that this is such a turn
Uh-huh.
toward the superficial, but how did you sort of develop I don't know. Anyway, so I'm reading the book, but I'm also, of course, I have a picture of you in my head because of just following you on Instagram. And then I'm like, how did, your interest in fashion develop? Is it a means of creative expression? Is it like self-definition? Is it a way of expressing some sort of autonomy and that sort of, I don't know. But like how did fashion come into your life? And I
Yeah.
know this is kind of parallel to your visual arts, but I do think you have such a beautiful visual sense that comes across too.
Ah, thank you. Thanks. Same to you, by the way. I think it's just something we fall into, isn't it? Like we're creative people, and I think for me personally, it came out of again being able to be more free in London and in England, and again just feeling secure enough to know that I can,
Yeah.
and not feeling like I have to like constantly save every penny I have in case I need a lawyer.
Yeah.
Because that was the feeling that I had in the US when I was undocumented. And just being able to actually like go, oh, I have a little bit to express myself with. And yeah, my taste tends towards the I mean this is not an indicator, this is my husband's shirt. But my taste tends to go towards like the dark and frilly like elevated goth girl sort of thing, which is, I think you relate to. Essence Girls Unite. So yeah, I think it was just more of a desire to say like
Yeah.
I'm here, and I see me. If you see me, great, but I see me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting because I was reading the book and I was thinking about yeah, I just as you come more into focus toward the end of the book, it does I was like, oh, it makes so much sense that she loves fashion, that she's that she really takes pleasure in dressing herself. I don't know, it just seemed to make really like so much sense toward the end, and that
Yeah.
comfort becomes so palpable in ways, you know, for the end of the book too, that
Yeah.
there's a sense, that sense of safety just completely, it doesn't completely shift the tone of the book, but there's
Yeah.
just this kind of a lifting of a cloud toward the end that,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. No, I think, yeah, you know what? Thank you for bringing that up. I've never really thought about it. I think, yeah, I think I've just spent so much time like living life with like clenched fists and to be able to just kind of, care about my appearance and appreciate the art of dressing well for oneself.
yeah.
That's really important to me. I gotta say, I'm struggling a little bit with like the girlies here love their like athleisure, which I guess is a look, but it's like, oh, do you have to wear leggings every day? We're in a restaurant, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's a little bit of just a way of like locating yourself in the
Yeah,
world, you
yeah.
know? Yeah.
No, that's so cool. And it is interesting. No, I have this feeling in Sawanchu where it's like, can someone please like, I'm always Andre Leontali being like, my eyes are starving for beauty. Like, please, please, can someone get dressed? And then like I'm sure having going from London to San Francisco is like a similar experience. Like going from New York to someone, it's just like, can someone
Yeah.
put on something? Anything that's
Yeah.
interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
just, it's a
Yeah.
struggle, but like, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't want to end this on a superficial note. I did have the feeling that the your means of dressing one is so interesting, and I wanted to say that. And I know also that
Thank
you,
you.
because you canceled your physical book tour, you don't get to
Yeah,
wear,
I know. I
yeah.
just
And
wear them on the weekends now, just looking absolutely ridiculous. And I don't care. I'll wear like I have these I have to describe it for a page somehow and for everyone, but these like amazing Yoji Yamamoto pants that I got on clearance like 2 Januaries ago, January clearances. And they're like there's like pockets of fabric that stick out from it, so it looks like a parachute, and I just wore that around. It's fine.
I love it. I do
The
feel we missed out
anti-leggings.
on the looks, so we did have to talk about the looks. We had to
Uh,
appreciate the
Thanks.
effort in a world where there's not enough effort. But I did want to open it up. Does anyone have a question if you wanted to come off mic or type it into the chat? I know Lorna is who has been able to read the book. I know.
Yeah. Oh,
Hello. Hi, Jill and everybody. Thank you, Alicia, and everyone who made this possible. I haven't read the entire book yet, but I spent a lot of time, with your bibliography, Jill. I was just like
okay. Oh,
totally
cool.
immersed in it.
Oh,
And I
cool.
think, yes, oh my gosh. I mean, I think I could do a self-study course just looking at your bibliography. But uh my some of my points and questions were I love how you interspersed how to cook. For example, kare kare is one of my favorites. And then even in your steps for cooking, they really I highlighted some of I think it's chapter 3,
Okay.
but like when you pulverize things or when you boil things, or even when you related lingua tongue and then you reference your tongue, like keeping it softer sometimes because you're in certain
All
situations.
right. Yeah.
So I just loved how it went back and forth and up and down and all around. It was I haven't had the pleasure to read a book in that format. And so, when you said that perhaps you might adapt it to a screenplay, one of my questions or things to ponder for you is, because I know you love music also, because you're like culture through and through and through.
Mm.
What kind of music, perhaps? And then, secondly, your doggy Gus. Do
Okay.
you, do you speak to him in English, Tagalog, or British English? And what does he eat?
Oh, yeah.
So I
No,
know I'm
he,
throwing a lot, but I'm just
yeah.
so excited. And thank
No,
you, Alicia, for the questions and comments you have, because it just, as you guys know, enriches the whole experience. So thank you.
Lorna, thank you. Thanks for being here. Um, yeah, Gus gets Tagalog and he gets English. I don't bother with like British English because I'm not Madonna. Um,
I
I
was going to
just feel
ask this too. I'm
silly.
glad someone got to it.
It feels silly, right? It's like I've already adapted an accent, and I'm not gonna go ahead and like do another third accent. That sounds exhausting. Um, so yeah, he gets Tagalog, particularly if like he won't eat his food, he'll get some Tagalog from me. Um, but yeah, I think in terms of music, while writing this book, I veered towards a lot of Johan Johansson. He has this gorgeous album called The Last and First Men, which I think he was in the middle of writing before he died unexpectedly. But that's a really gorgeous album, and I went into that a lot whenever I went into the mythology or the darker parts. Uh, what else did I go into a lot? Did a lot of film scores, just wordless things, but like darker film scores. I did a lot of, oh my God, who's the guy from Trent Reznor? Trent Reznor scores. Yeah, those are amazing. I did that a lot. And that always helps. I think writers will tell you we all have like our soundtracks. You know, Alicia will probably tell you she has her own soundtracks just to get you into the emotional space. And sometimes, you know, if I've had kind of a crazy day, but I know I need to write something like kind of heavy and mystical, it's like, oh God, I need to get into I need to plug in. I'll like listen to the album for a bit, and then I'm in. So yeah, that helped a lot. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, then we'll get Trent Reznor to do your movie score. Trent Reznor, Atticus
Listen,
Ross, Dirty Kitchen.
if you
Yes.
can get that to happen, that'd be amazing. I'd be
I
like, I
think
don't
it.
care what else happens. Hey, his wife's
Oh,
Filipino. We never know.
yeah. Oh, that is such a good in. That's a really good in. You've got to
I'll
be
be
friends,
like,
make friends with
Kumusta,
her.
Trent?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
Does anyone else have a question while we're here? Paige, do you have a question?
I have a question.
sure.
I hope I'm able to articulate this, but I've been also writing a screenplay and have been like revisiting a lot of trauma and sort of re-traumatized myself a bit without
Oh,
understanding emotionally how that happens until it
yeah,
happened.
yeah,
And I was
yeah,
like, oh, that's right. Of course, there's
yeah,
still things here. And I
yeah.
I found myself when I was like taking notes from someone that is teaching a screenwriting class at the store that it's like very important for me to convey the truth, but it's a screenplay. So it's extremely difficult to sort of hear like notes about this isn't earned when you feel very strongly about something, and having to sort of figure out how to get across like a poetic truth and sometimes to utilize that more so than the truth. And
Mm,
so, because in my mind, I'm like, well, the truth should be able to get across the poetic truth, and it doesn't always, but you know that you
mm.
can't. Does this make sense at all?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
It's
yeah,
an
it's a
emotional.
visual medium. It's limited, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like hearing you talk about, structure, and I loved when you sort of talked about like how you have elements that kind of like link up and become something more, and how the story it's almost like these oh my God, I'm gonna start coughing. But mm,
The allergies are atrocious right now.
I'm gonna cough.
Yeah, I
No, but
think
I feel this, yeah, this comes up a lot for memoirists, I think.
yeah,
The distinction between confessing and writing is definitely one that
yeah.
is very real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's almost like you have to distill what the message is that you want to get across, and then write the relevant parts of that, because otherwise it's overwhelming and people will get lost. Even I get lost sometimes. So yeah, it's the same, I think, for screenwriting in that you're working with a limited medium in that it's visual. You don't get to convey thoughts unless you put it in dialogue or you write it on screen somehow. So you have to rely on like sound and sometimes camera direction and the kind of shot that you use. So it's a different vocabulary. and sometimes the juxtaposition of certain scenes that can come across too. And sometimes you have to trust the viewer to be able
Yeah.
to read the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Are you okay,
We got
Paige?
Paige back.
I haven't talked to anyone all day as I
This
communicated
happens to
earlier.
me so much.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was a
This
hermit
happens to me so
today.
much.
I was a total hermit today, and here we are. But anyways, thank you for that answer. And it's the medium, and then also it's really hard to also just open it up to people and open up to others and realize
Mm.
that this now needs to become something bigger and that it's a good thing, that
Mhm.
it's a little bit not, completely being held like this. It's a good thing to sort of like hold it at a distance a bit and basically exercise it into art.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you're an inspiration
Oh, thank you.
because, yeah, because like it's being held tenderly, but also you're being extremely generous by
Oh, thank you.
giving it away. So,
Thank you. Thanks. I do have to say in the writing of it, I went to a lot of therapy, especially some of the most difficult parts of the book, and like you said, the re-traumatizing in the remembering, because your brain protects you from these things for a reason, and you forget things for a reason. So when you purposely open up the cellar door, it's like you're experiencing it all over again. And I had to stop writing for like a good month or so, particularly when I was writing about difficult events when I was 19, because I just needed to like go to therapy and figure out if I wanted to continue writing it, and like why am I writing it? Do I need
Right.
to write about it? And like having to understand the difference between like exercising it for myself and exercising it on the page, and then like what are the bigger implications and reasons for putting it on the page. And like you said, it's hard to like hold that at a distance and go, okay, like, is this useful? And it's kind of gross looking at it in such a pragmatic way, but having to like come to terms with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish you luck with that for sure.
Well, Paige also mentioned in the chat working with editors, and I know you mentioned cutting about 30,000 words. Was there
Yeah.
what was the editing process like for the book?
Yeah, my editor was really cool. She didn't interfere very much at all, just in getting like draft one out. And then she
Yeah.
had like three structural notes, basically to move certain chunks around. And then after that, she just wanted me to shorten some of the historical bits because I kind of got a little too in the weeds, and to shorten some mythological bits. And then I made the decision to remove certain stories from chapters because they were either there's too much, I was over egging the pudding, or it felt good to write at the time, but actually it didn't contribute anything
Right.
overall.
Yeah.
And I tend to be pretty clinical about editing. I'm not sentimentally attached to things. It matters more to me that like the work makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm, you know, I have lots of writer friends, we all do, and some of them really love their sentences and will like fight you to the death. But if you're like, this isn't working, and you tell me why, I'll be like, okay, and I'll
Yeah.
just save it for another piece
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's not gonna die. It's just in a Google Doc somewhere.
Yeah.
Um,
There's always another Google Doc.
there's
Yeah.
always another Google. It's fine. It's fine. It's like, okay, you don't want it. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I actually enjoyed being edited. I feel like I could have been edited some more, but I think I tend to just kind of. I think I'm only now starting to like the book. So, I don't know. Yeah, before that, it's like this needed to. Why did she let me put this in here? This is terrible.
Yeah. No, it's really, really beautifully done for like
Thanks.
the balance. And I keep saying balance, and this is because why? Because I'm in the second edit of my own book, and my editor is like balance, 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 like that's the word. And I'm
But
like, oh
you're
my
so
God,
good
Jill,
at that. I feel
no,
like
no,
you're.
no. But you did it like so good, like so good. The balance here is so perfect. And that's also why I'm like, process, structure. Tell us everything about how you made this
Yeah.
work, because you really are pulling together so these obviously interrelated threads, but the way you're doing it, it's so like, as a reader, the reader experience, it like as a piece of art, it's gorgeous and stunning. And what Lorna was saying too about the way, especially with the lengua, with the tongue, that was so beautifully done. And then you're also like the history, the mythology, the politics are done here like so, like just pitch perfect. Nothing is hitting anyone over the head. Not everything is so well done from the reader experience perspective too, that
Wow.
it's just like, I just, because I think, when you're balancing the recipes, I could, I think, some people may, the recipes might throw some people off, someone who's not a good or generous reader. And then, but I think that, or like has a weird relationship with food or something like that. But I think that, the way it's done is just so beautiful. And I'm not
Thank
blowing
you.
smoke up your ass. I'm
Thank
I'm
you so
talking as
much. That
someone who
means a
is like,
lot coming from you. Thank you.
no, but I've spent the last, almost like 2 years thinking so much about memoir structure, and what you do here
Yeah.
is just so stunning, and I love it so much. And I also, again, I would say, like, I just feel like you and Jamie Hood with Trauma Plot have just like,
I gotta
I
read
don't
that
know
next
how to
now.
come after. I don't know how anyone can come after what you guys have done. It's
Oh,
just really,
please. Oh
really
my
stunning.
God.
Paige, have you read Trauma Plot? Okay, everybody read it, and everybody read Dirty
Yes, I'm
Kitchen.
gonna read that
Dirty Kitchen
next.
goes without saying, but like, I'm just like, in terms of memoir structures, it's just both of these books are just so amazing, and I'm just so
Thank you.
lucky to have read them and to know the writer. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's we're always just standing on the shoulders of others, right? I mean, I think Viet Thanh Nguyen's memoir, The Man with Two Faces, came quite late. Like I was almost pretty much done with the book. I was in structural edits, but I was feeling very not confident about the weaving together and all of the sort of different parts bolted together. I felt very like I think I did this wrong. That was my feeling. And then I saw how he had taken that experimentation and like blew it up even more. And he had poetry woven in there, and like the page was kind of all fractured. And I thought, oh, okay, this can be done and it's possible. And it's inspiring to see how we all do that,
Yeah.
and how we all have these different. It's very Virginia Woolf. What did she call it? Corners, mirrors hung up in strange corners. Yeah, just little mirrors hung up in strange corners. So it'll be exciting to see what your little mirrors are. Um, and I think just based on everything of yours that I've read, it's going to be stunning. So
Oh, well,
thank
thank
you.
you. But I
Thanks.
didn't, I'm just saying these things because I'm literally like, I think so much about memoir structure. And there's a Sophie Nunberg, who's like, I think more known as like a TikTok influencer, but she's getting
Oh,
a literature PhD, and she's wonderful and she's so smart. And
wow.
she was talking about her PhD like readings, and she said something's really great about memoir, which is like, it is a genre, it's a literary genre, but everybody does it differently. Like, it is a genre with no rules. And so that's
Yeah,
why it's so fascinating always. And I think,
yeah,
if people don't like memoir, then they're being silly. But I think that
yeah.
that's what's so fascinating about it as a genre, is watching people do it their way, and
It's
and
the
building
ultimate
building a new,
self-expression, isn't it?
yes,
Yeah,
and like
because
building a literary form in your own way. Every
yeah,
memoir is that, and I think that that's what's
yeah.
so fascinating about it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have, like we said, we have. I mean, I remember being so excited when Annie Ernaux won the Nobel, because it's just like, oh my God, there's like a place, right,
Yeah.
for memoir, and there's a place for like locating yourself within like the larger story, and not just kind of placing the blame entirely on yourself as an individual when you're writing a memoir.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's absolutely right. There's no rules to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Lorna?
Um, I was wondering, Jill, if you didn't mind, because I know you had explained to us during the Bel Canto Zoom meeting
Uh-huh.
about your cover and how you stood firm on fighting, because I just absolutely love your book cover.
Oh,
jacket.
thank
If
you.
you don't,
Yeah.
if it's cool with you, and Alicia, I
Yeah.
don't know if y'all have
Oh yeah,
time.
go. Of
Okay,
course.
Oh wait, it's blurry.
thank you.
Yeah, so this is from 1988, Christmas 1988, and my school was having like an "It's a Small World After All" Christmas pageant, and we have a lot of colorism in the Philippines. So they thought, well, Jill has pale skin and her hair is not so black, so she can be Miss America. And so that's how I ended up being Miss America, and everyone else had to represent different countries. And my dad was like, okay, well, how do you dress up like an American? And he thought, okay, I'll just dress you up as Uncle Sam. And my dad made that outfit from scratch. And that's what that picture is. It's New Year's Eve, and that's a San Miguel beer. And I think that's a lechon there. And this is my grandpa's kitchen. And I fought for that cover. When I got the book deal, I sent that picture to my then brand new editor and was like, I want this on the cover. But I think when they were making the cover, and I think you'll find this is true as well, Alicia, there's like these sort of conventions that the marketing team falls into when they're like, okay, what kind of book cover will sell? And so they're thinking Asian, food, Asian woman. So the first covers were like neon green and neon pink and neon blue. And then there was like, they took a picture off my Instagram without asking for my permission. And it was kind of like a sexy-ish picture from when I was 23. It was very kind of objectifying. And then there was a banana leaf and silhouettes of food. And I was just like, yeah, this is a lot of stereotypes all at once. And I
Yeah.
get that this is about, selling covers, but this is not telling the story you think it's telling, particularly with a slightly sexualized picture, or at least it feels sexualized, the way they had put it on the cover. So yeah, I think we went through like 5 rounds and I kept saying no to everything. And I
Need to
immediately,
cut you off. I need to cut
yeah,
you off and say congratulations on surviving that. That's hard. I would
I was like,
murder
no.
everyone. I would go find offices and it would be anyway, I should not say this over Zoom, but I congratulations, you're very mentally equipped and have a lot of good therapy.
Yeah, no, I cried a lot. And then I was like, very polite, like, I just don't think this is going to work, but
Yeah.
So yeah, it was hard, and at the end, my editor was like, "Okay, why don't I put you in a meeting with the book designer, who turned out to have had like 12 other wonderful designs, but the marketing team just focused in on this like neon, graphic, comic-looking banana leaf cover because it fell to certain stereotypes, I guess." And the book designer just immediately went with what I wanted, and I wanted this very sort of Filipino street writing font and this picture, and
Yeah.
that was that. And I think she sorted it out in like 15 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a amazing cover. And I'm glad you asked. Oh, Claire.
Hmm. Claire, I think you have to unmute possibly.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, I had a question, and I'm sorry, I haven't read your book yet, but I will. I just saw this event today and wanted to sign up for it.
Okay.
I think you said something earlier, that reminded me of something that Elaine Castillo wrote in her book America is Not the Heart. I know it was like a novel, but I guess the main character was saying something like she immigrated to the US and didn't expect that everything that Filipino people ate in the US was like party food or fiesta food.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah,
could you
yeah,
talk a little bit more about that? And please let me know if it is like written more in the book, I'm sure, but like as someone who was born here, my parents are from the Philippines. I've never really been, and
yeah, yeah,
I want to read your book, and I also have to like gird myself because of like the traumatic history I guess that many Filipino American women may relate to, just in terms of that family aspect. But is it like, is it is the food that we eat here just not what's eaten in the Philippines?
It is. It is. It very much is, Claire. And that's a great and thoughtful question, particularly from, the context of like being a Filipino American as you are. Um, it is eaten in the Philippines, just I think not as often, particularly in like a home setting. And again, I haven't lived in the Philippines for a very long time, so it might have changed now. In fact, I know now that the Philippines is much more cosmopolitan and people will eat, sushi one day and like steak the next. And that's just normal there now because of globalization in the Philippines. But growing up, and in the context that I wrote about it in 1993, a regular meal might just be some steamed rice, some very simple, like smoked fish that's been fried, and like a tomato and mango and onion salad.
Oh,
And just
yeah.
very simple fare. Still one of my favorite things to eat, but definitely not like platters of kare kare and pancit and just tons of everything all at once, all the time. That was very clear in the context of 1992, 93, 94. And I think the way we eat Filipino food here in the US is slowly changing as well, from being like one of celebration and memory to one of like assimilation and developing an actual Filipino American cuisine, which is very
Mm.
different. I don't know if you know about like Abby Balingit's cookbook, which is very Filipino American,
Mm.
and lots of chefs now who are cooking very Filipino American cuisine. But yeah, in terms of like party food, it was just not as common. It's like you do that when you get together with relatives, once a month maybe.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
had a follow-up question to that. Like now that you're in the Bay Area, do you see a difference in how Filipino food is treated there versus what you may have known about it or eaten out in New York?
It's the same.
Okay.
It's the same. I think the one difference I do recognize is even though there are lots and lots of Filipinos in New York and New Jersey, because there's so many more Filipinos in California, there's a different level of like just comfort and being.
Ubiquity. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit, and just kind of
Um,
just comfort and self-knowledge, you know, um,
mm,
and just an understanding of belonging here
I
in
see. Yep.
California. I'm
That's
I'm
really
starting to
interesting.
see. Yeah, yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like it's a little bit more exotic here sometimes. Um, Even though I know it's changing for sure. But thank you.
Thanks for your questions. Okay.
Yeah. Paige, I think yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we this was such an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
I did early-ish on remember to hit record, so we recorded the whole thing. And I just want to thank you both so much for um you're bringing your authenticity and bringing yourselves and bringing your whole selves to this conversation and to all the work that you do. It's
Thank you.
yeah, I can't stand anything else anymore. We don't have room for it. We don't have room for it. And I just really, really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone who came, and thank you to Lorna and Claire and
Yeah, thanks
everyone.
everybody. It was
And
amazing chatting to you, Alicia, of
Oh,
course.
thank you. Thank you. Always,
Yeah.
I'm so happy we got the chance. Thank you, Paige, for bringing us
Yeah,
together
thank
here.
you, Paige.
of course, anytime, I'll just turn on the Zoom
All right.
and the link. Yeah, well, would you like to say anything before we go? I would just say to everyone, please follow Alicia and Jill's work if you haven't already. Buy their books,
Please
and
follow
follow them on
Archestratus.
Instagram.
Yeah.
And if you,
Buy books from Archestratus.
thank you. And yeah, would you like to say anything before we go have second dinner?
No, ooh, second dinner. No, no, this was amazing. I really enjoyed chatting about all of this with you both, and thanks to everyone for coming. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All
All
right.
right.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Good
All
night.
right, guys.
See ya.
Good night.
Thank
Bye.
you.